Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is John McDougall. I am the event coordinator here at Murder by the Book in Houston. And before I bring our authors out and get us started this evening, I want to make a couple of quick announcements. First up, Jenn McKinlay is not joining us this evening. Unfortunately, she had a family emergency and is not going to be joining us. So I just wanted to mention you will not see her. But if you want to hear Jenn chat about books, we have done a couple of virtual events with her previously. So you can check those out in the store's Facebook and YouTube channel. And so before we get into tonight's and bring our authors out, just some general store stuff. If you haven't come to visit us in a while, we are open for browsing again. So hope you come visit us. We're super excited. We are now starting to plan some in-store events for 2022. We're going to finish out the rest of 2021 as virtual. We are going to be doing an in-store recommends event. Some of you guys might be familiar with our Murder by the Book recommends. It's essentially just kind of the staff sitting around the table in the store talking about some of our favorite reads. So this year on November 27th, which is Small Business Saturday, we'll be doing one at 11 o'clock, and we'll also be doing at 1 o'clock. We'll be talking about the same books at 1, so if you can't make them both, you won't miss anything. So we'll be talking about some of our favorite books of the year, some of our holiday recommends, and some gift book ideas. Also, super excited to announce that we are finally reopening on Sundays. So we have been closed on Sundays since March of last year. With staffing and pandemic, it's just been harder to have the full realm of days being open. So starting Sunday, November 28th, which is the Sunday after Thanksgiving, we are going to be open from noon to 5 on Sundays. So please come visit Sally and Brenda on those days and make it worth them showing up. I'm seeing lots of people in the comments saying hi. So if you guys have questions while we're chatting, please make sure that you post those. A couple other things I wanted to mention real quick. If you were not familiar, this time last year, we started a Murder by the Box subscription service. One of those is a Cozy of the Month. So as you guys know, I'm the resident Cozy reader. So if you want me to pick out I try to do first in series, new first in series. So that way it's something you haven't read and not something that you have to have read previous books to jump in. You can visit the store's website. I also dropped a link in the comments to get more information about that. I'm super excited. I just picked my December title and I'm already looking at the 2022 titles. So there's lots of great stuff coming up. Also wanted to mention, I'm so excited. If you guys follow me on Twitter, you might know that in the last year and a half or so, I have been binge reading all of the Leslie Meyer Lucy Stone mysteries. I've read all 27 of them and all of the novellas since September of last year. And we're going to be doing a virtual event with Leslie in March. We just got that confirmed. So definitely make sure that you check out the store's website. For now, so when you hit the store website, when you look at January and February, the events will either say virtual or in-store in the titles, so you'll know what's happening. And I know people have been worried that once we start doing in-store stuff, we're going to abandon the virtual world. That is not the case. We'll still be doing some virtual events. We're still trying to figure out what being able to live stream some of the stuff that we've got going on in the store is going to look like. So we are not abandoning the virtual world. We're hoping to be able to do a lot of hybrid stuff. So we're super excited about that. So I think those are all of my general announcement things. So I'm going to bring our authors out. I am going to start with Lynn Cahoon. How are you tonight, Lynn?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Well, thank you. How's Houston?
It's good. You know, it's just that weird temperature where it's not quite fall yet, but it's not summer. So we're happy, but it could be a couple of degrees cooler.
It's pretty chilly here. So.
Yeah. So Lynn's most recent release was Two Wicked Desserts that came out this summer. It was the second book in her Kitchen Witch mystery series. And so for those of you who might not be familiar, Lynn Cahoon is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of the Kitchen Witch mysteries, the Cat Latimer Mystery series, the Tourist Trap mysteries, and the Farm to Fork series. Originally from Idaho, she grew up living in the small town life she now loves to feature in her novels. A member of Sisters in Crime, Mystery Writers of America, and international thriller writers, she lives with her husband and 2 fur babies in a small historic town on the banks of the Mississippi River. Also wanted to mention while I'm thinking of it, talking about next year stuff, since Lynn, her bio says that she is a member of Sisters in Crime. We also have a local Houston chapter, and we're looking at getting them to be doing meetings in the store next year as well. So we're super excited to be able to be welcoming them back. Next up, I'm going to bring out Denise Swanson. How are you tonight, Denise?
Hi, everybody.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Denise, have you ever been to the store to Murder by the Book?
Probably about 20 years ago, I
Okay.
used to travel with a band of merry women called the Deadly Divas. And when my first book came out in 2000, Murder of a Small Town Honey, we did the Texas tour, and I'm pretty sure we were there.
Nice. Perfect. So we're so excited to be able to do this with you tonight. So Denise's newest book is Body Over Troubled Waters, which is number 4 in the Welcome Back to Scumble River series. And Denise Swanson is the New York Times bestselling author of the Scumble River Mysteries, the Devereaux's Dime Store Mysteries, and the Chef to Go Mysteries, as well as the Change of Heart Contemporary Romances. She has been nominated for RT Magazine's Career Achievement Award, the Agatha Award, and the Mary Higgins Clark Award. And next, we're going to bring out Katherine Bruns, who is the one who put all of this together for us this evening. How are you tonight, Katherine?
I'm great. How are you, John?
I'm good. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So Katherine's newest release, The Enemy You Gnocchi, just came out on October 26th. And USA Today bestselling author Katherine Bruns lives in upstate New York with an all-male household that consists of her very patient husband, 3 sons, and several spoiled pets. Katherine has a BA in both English and performing arts and is a former newspaper reporter and press release writer. In her spare time, she loves to bake, read, and attend live theater performances. Over the past 5 years, she's written 15 mystery novels, plus several novellas, and has many more stories waiting to be told. I'm excited to chat with all of you guys tonight because you all have such really great deep catalogs, having written multiple series and things like that. So I'm excited to get into it. I'm going to start us off really easy. We're going to start with Lynn. Can you tell us a little bit about the newest book in your series and kind of about your Kitchen Witch series in general?
Sure. The Kitchen Witch series is set in Idaho, so I've always wanted to set it as a story in that mountain area where it's so magical and the small towns and everybody knows everyone. And so, but of course that's been written a lot. And so I threw a coven in there. But my person, Mia, she's not part of the coven. Her and her grandmother were what they call kitchen witches. And they spell for world peace and they work on that. So Mia's learning all of these steps on how to be a good kitchen witch. And she opened up a catering service. So she's doing the catering stuff, which Magic Springs is near Sun Valley. So there's a lot of rich people around that she can go and do catering and do the drop-off dinners and all of that. Two Wicked Desserts is the story. It's been a while. But, she has a murder that she has to solve. It's a lot about the schoolhouse, and you can kind of see it in the back. It's really faded out, but she took a schoolhouse and she's redesigning it, remodeling it. Apparently I was an HGTV star in my past lives because I love that remodeling stuff. So I took this old schoolhouse, she's remodeling it. And in this one, she is finding out more about the schoolhouse and what's going on in there. And there's a few ghosts that, come and visit her. So the Kitchen Witch series itself is going to be 6 books. I just signed a contract for 3 more. So I'm real excited about that. And it just takes Mia through that process of knowing that she has powers, but not knowing, what her powers are. And so she's developing that.
Perfect. Thank you. And so, Denise, can you tell us what the Scumble River Gang is up to in Body Over Troubled Waters?
Well, this is book number 4 in the Welcome Back series, but it's actually book number 23 in the whole series that started so long ago. In this one, Sky, who is a school psychologist, just as I was for 22 years, is just coming back to work after maternity leave. She had twins, boy and a girl, in the last book, and she was on maternity leave, and now she's dealing with being apart from her kids, getting daycare, getting them weaned onto a bottle and all of that kind of thing. And she also has a intern that's been working with her, school psych interns. So she's juggling a lot of pieces, as most women are nowadays, I think, with family and actually most people, not just most women, and kids and work. And on her, about the first day back, like Lynn, I wrote this a long time ago. And I've had like 3 books since then, but I think it was the first day back. The school superintendent calls a special meeting, and as superintendents often do, gets everyone upset, and they end up in a active shooter lockdown. And that's pretty much where the book starts, because I don't like to start slow. So they're off to the races after that.
We've got some great comments coming in. So Lynn Druan says, congratulations on the book deal. It's exciting to know that there's going to be more in this series. So Katherine, can you tell us a little bit about The Enemy You Gnocchi?
Yes. Enemy Gnocchi is the 3rd book in the Italian Chef series. Obviously, by the cover, you can tell it's a Christmas cozy. A little background: the main character, Tessa Esposito, is a gourmet Italian chef. She's had a lifetime dream of opening her own restaurant, and it was a dream she had with her husband. Unfortunately, in the first book, what happened is we first meet Tessa right after her husband has passed away. And she finds out shortly afterwards that his car crash was not an accident. He was actually murdered. Someone tampered with his car. So the first 3 books kind of follow her as she's trying to find her way back and get over this traumatic loss in her life. It's a little more somber than most cozies are. I mean, there's a couple of humorous moments, but a lot of family around her, rally around her to help her. So the 3rd book takes place a year, about 14 months after her husband has passed away, and she's really determined to try and enjoy Christmas this year. And she has a very dear friend who runs the local coffee shop. His name is Archie. He's kind of like a father figure to her. And there is another man who has come in and is kind of stealing the monopoly of coffee in the town of Harvest Park. And no one can figure out where he's getting all this money from. He's having this big Christmas game, the 12 days of Christmas. He gives away TVs and Keurigs and everything you can think of. And no one likes him because he's basically trying to step on everybody's toes, not just Archie's, but he's trying to take business away from like everybody. And he's also after like every woman in town who's under the age of 60. So he decides he wants to play Santa at the Festival of Lights. He's found murdered, and Archie, of course, is the main suspect. So Tessa wants to do anything she can to help her friends.
So one of the things I'm always curious about, especially with specifically Christmas mysteries. So when you were sitting down to write the new one, did you want it to be Christmas, or was it something like, because I know sometimes editors will say, hey, what if we did a Christmas one? Whose idea was it to do it set at Christmas?
This was actually mine. When we pitched the series, my agent wanted me to have a synopsis ready for book 2 and 3. And let me just say, I really hate synopses. Really bad. So
the work of the devil.
I think so. So I kind of had it planned from the beginning, and my editor was great about it. They didn't try to sway me into doing anything. I think I first was planning it for the 2nd book, but then it worked out that it was going to be the 3rd one. So
it seems like it's easier now. You know, it used to be a lot of times authors would just have a book out a year. So if you wanted to do a Christmas one, it was harder. But I know now like 6 or 9 months seems to be a good interval for, especially for a lot of cozy series. So I think it makes it easier for you to be able to kind of experiment with stuff like that.
Mine's been a year, like for each one. And the first one came out in July, and then they purposely delayed the 3rd one a few months so it would line up more with Christmas. So.
And Lynn, you just did a Christmas novella for the Kitchen Witch series, didn't you?
I did, yeah. Have a holly haunted Christmas. So I love writing Christmas and scary stuff and mixing those type 2 things together, and Christmas and murder, you know, all the fun stuff with Christmas, you know. But the novella,
I said Christmas can be scary.
Christmas is very scary a lot of times, but it was fun because Mia got to decorate. Well, she didn't. She tried to decorate the school, and her boyfriend came over, and he just took over, and he's a really good decorator. So, so it was fun playing with those kind of roles and stuff like that. With that, I have several other. For some reason, I was writing a lot of Christmas this last year. I have a Cat Latimer Christmas. I had this Christmas. It's like, I like Christmas.
Have you done any Christmas books, Denise?
I have. I think because my birthday is Christmas Day, and so I am not as huge a fan of Christmas as a lot of people are. I really consider it my birthday, and you know, the other parts are sort of annoying.
You get shortchanged.
Yeah. So actually, I did a Christmas wedding for my for Sky in the Scumble River series. It was called Murder of a Stacked Librarian, and she was getting married in December, and so it was a lot of Christmas and a lot of wedding and a little bit of mystery. Sometimes it's hard to get the murder in there when you're juggling so many other aspects of the books.
So since there's kind of Christmas all around, I've got to do a couple of specific Christmas questions that we'll pepper in while we're chatting. So, or holiday in general. So Lynn, what is one of your favorite holiday traditions?
I love putting up a tree. I mean, it doesn't have to be a fresh tree. I love a fresh tree, but I just love what I do is I turn off all the lights at night, and I just sit and I watch the tree. And it's the most magical 15 minutes of my day. And it's just so inviting. When I was growing up, we had a silver tree. Sorry. When I was growing up, we had a silver tree, and my mom had a color wheel. And so when I was a child, I was just a baby, and I'd sit there and watch that color wheel. I remember seeing it turn. So it turned from blue to red to green to blue to red to green. And so I think that's what started me watching Christmas trees. But I just love that. It's just so peaceful.
And so are you a Christmas tree up before Thanksgiving, or do you have to wait until Thanksgiving to put it up person?
No, I put it up probably the week after Thanksgiving. I don't keep it up very long. I just like it for the colors. So
yeah, I've worked retail more years than I care to admit. So some years it's like, yay, Christmas, and some years it's like, no, make Christmas go away. So there was like one year where we just didn't have the energy, and like it was really late and we hadn't put up a tree yet. So we literally just put up the artificial tree. We didn't put any ornaments on it, but it was just nice to have the tree up with the lights and be able to just like enjoy at least that much of it. How about you, Denise? What's a favorite Christmas tradition or holiday tradition that you have?
I guess we put my mom's Christmas tree. My mother is very into the holidays and has all the decorations, more than, you know, anyone 94-year-old should have. And so my husband and I, usually the day after Thanksgiving, will go down and get her tree up for her, and get, you know, the things she can't do going. And she does the decorations, and she's like you, Lynn. It just makes her very happy to sit and watch. My husband found a box he could put the tree in to make it spin around. I mean,
wow.
Like turn slowly, not spin. That didn't sound right. And it makes me happy because she's so happy. And that's sort of my focus these days, is just keeping her spirits up. So that's probably my favorite holiday tradition for our family, is just getting her all geared up for the Christmas season.
That's wonderful. How about you, Katherine?
I like the decorations too myself, but well, this one's kind of a little bit corny, I guess, but I really like to watch some of my favorite Christmas movies while I'm wrapping gifts.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess I take special joy in the ones that I love. My husband hates them, like A Christmas Story, and they have the 24-hour marathon, and I would like sit there and watch it for 24 hours, and he can't take it. So
I agree with your husband on that one.
I think you either love it or you hate it. So.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so one of my favorite questions to ask for cozies. So I feel like cozies and authors tend to do cozies one of two ways as far as the body. You either find it at the that first chapter, or the author likes to let you kind of get to know the murder victim before they bump them off. So which are you? Let's go backwards and start with Katherine. Do you want the body right away, or do you like the person to get to know your victim?
Usually get to know them first. I remember a long time ago someone telling me in the industry that the murder should occur by the end of chapter 3. So I've always kind of stuck with that as a rule. The only difference with the Italian Chef series is that Tessa's husband has already died when the book starts. And there is another murder later on in the first book, but he's already passed away. And I did that purposefully because since it was her husband, I didn't want, a lot of times readers don't like it when it's somebody who's so close to the main character. So I figured, well, if they've never really gotten to meet him and they just know what Tessa says about him, then that should make it okay to do it that way. So but for the most part, other than that series, I like for the readers to get to know the characters, the killer, well, not know, but suspect and and the victim.
How about you, Denise?
I mix it up, but I think the more I write, the longer the series and the more series that I write, I have gotten more to where I want them at least to have met the victim and had a little bit of time to get to know them. With this book, since it's the superintendent of schools, if people have read the entire series, then they've seen him quite a bit popping in and out. He never has had a huge role before, just, the sort of annoying guy that comes in and screws up Sky's day. But I do like that. And I agree with you, Katherine. In my second book in the series, I killed off Sky's grandmother, and people were not happy with me at all. Not as bad as killing off a love interest, though, which I understand if that can really cause fan.
So I've heard, yeah.
And how about you, Lynn?
I go by the 3-chapter dead guy rule.
I never heard that rule.
Like chapter 4, and it's like, wait, I don't have a dead guy yet, so then I have to go back and change things. But
no, I'm pretty curious.
Yeah, I kind of did a series like Katherine's where I had a mystery that went over 3 books as well as the mysteries in the book. Mm-hmm. And it was a husband, but it was an ex-husband, so it was okay. But he even grew in the 3 books. He became more likable as the books went by. You found out that maybe his story wasn't the story that she thought it was. So mm-hmm. I loved writing that, where you have something ongoing with that. So that's really fun to do.
So as we mentioned, kind of when we got started, you guys all have kind of nice backlists, and you've all done, kind of long-running series as well. So Susan wants to know, is there a challenge to writing a series as opposed to a standalone book? And what are some of the things like you as a writer do to make sure, like, if you have a long-running series, that like you're still interested in writing the characters and to keep readers coming back? Let's start with Lynn.
That's a great question. I was worried about that because, I write so many series, and I'm on 15 with Tourist Trap. So one of the things I did as a study guide is the same thing that you did with Leslie, is I read everything that J.D. Robb had. And so I read books here and there. And so, but I started at the beginning and just read it through. Mm-hmm. And really focused on how she introduced the ongoing characters all the time, where she put the murder, what she did with that. So you saw how someone else did it, and it helped me try to put a little bit more structure into my ideas. I think the thing that I'm running into with a long series, and Denise said this with her person, or at least that she's having babies now and she's doing this, is it's really hard to move them from being a couple and then being, getting married and then doing all of the other things, and which is part of life. And if they truly love each other. But I had several comments on when are they going to get married? Why aren't they married yet? And I've written 3 books where he's already proposed and they're still not married, and I'm not sure when they're going to get married. So it's that kind of anticipation I think that readers, are trying kind of push series into, is this like we want them to be married. It's like, nope, they're living together. Sorry.
And I don't remember who it was at some point that I talked to somebody that, it's also hard because like once you get them married, like if they're still dating or, they're in a relationship, but they're not married, like it's easier for a character to like go run off and like do something on their own because like there aren't stakes there. But once you're married and you have a family, like you can't just go put yourself in imminent danger because there are other people and other factors that you have to take in. So I imagine that's tough.
Yeah, I have enough trouble because she has to have somebody to watch the dog if they leave town. Who's going to watch the dog? Luckily, Toby lives next door, so it's okay. But so Toby took the dog on a ride around because he's a cop. So
yeah. How about you, Denise? Any thoughts or tips on long running series?
Well, I started so long ago. Back in 2000, there just weren't that many people writing cozies. Or I didn't know I was writing a cozy, to tell you the truth, because it wasn't even called that. And I didn't know I was writing a series. I wrote the first book and found an agent, and she said, start writing the next one. And I said, what? And she said, we sell series. We don't sell a single book. And I'm like, oh, see, I didn't know much about the business at all. I came in pretty ignorant about that. I didn't even know the 3-chapter rule about the dead guy. So
the dead guy.
Once I realized that this was going to be a series and could conceivably go for several books, I had no idea it would go for 24 books, but could conceivably go. I sort of sat down and thought to myself, how do I want her life to go? I see it more as how the main character's life is going to progress, and the mysteries are a part of it. But I really am a character-driven writer and write characters more than setting or mysteries or anything like that. Everything's about the character for me. Yeah. So my first book, Sky, had just come home after pretty much flunking out on life. She had been fired. She had been dumped by her fiance, and she was riddled with debt. So she, came home with her tail between her legs, and so she was. Luckily, I had started her about as low as you could go. I mean, she wasn't homeless, but she was pretty close. Luckily, she had a lot of family, so she wasn't living in her car. But if she wouldn't have had that family support, she could have easily been in that situation. So I started her there, and every book, my goal has been to have her grow, have her change, have her become stronger, have her become more of herself, to grow into herself and her potential and what she can be. And I started the series off with Penguin, and my editor there was extremely nervous about having her get married. So Lynn, I can so sympathize with what you're saying, because I don't even know how far in. I was 16, 18 books before I was able to get her married, because my editor just, every time I would introduce that as a concept for the next book, she just said, no, you'll kill the series. So finally, I just this was the natural progression. Plus, she was getting older. She had had been a little bit older to start with in the book than a lot of the sleuths start. So I knew I had to get, I mean, she had to make that step if she ever was going to. So I guess I never exactly know where they're going the next book, but I know it's going to be the next part of their lives. So, I personally don't have children. And when I got her pregnant and knew that I was going to have to deal with babies in books, I was pretty panicked. Luckily, my editor at Source Books, which is where I took the series to after leaving Penguin, was pregnant at the exact time. So she was able to sort of guide me through what was going on.
So and so one of the things I know that you did, when you moved from Penguin to Source Books, that you jumped the series a little bit further in time to make them a little bit more contemporary. So what is that? How is that like, having written so many books in the series and now the timeline is different? What's that like, trying to wrap your head around the new timeline for them?
It's actually just so much easier. That was another thing that my editor at Penguin was very adamant about, keeping them more in the past, and I could see her point. It was a good point, because it was a lot easier when there weren't cell phones around every corner and all this technology. And, it's hard to have any kind of mystery when everybody's life is 24/7 on camera half the time. But I was relieved when I changed publishers, that they were willing to change the series slightly and let me bring it into modern times, because it was very difficult sometimes to think, could this really happen? Would this have happened back then? Plus, people were confused a lot, I think, about it being in the past, especially since she's a professional. She's a school psychologist, and things in that field change every year. And they'd read the book and go, well, that's not how they do it anymore. And they'd write me, and I'd be like, yeah, but it's 1987 there. I'm sorry. So I'm just glad to have her professionally in where she should be. Because I was a school psychologist. I promise I know how this goes.
Yeah. And how about you, Katherine? Any long-running series thoughts?
First, I just want to say about what Denise was saying. It's so funny, because hearing you talk about that in the 1980s, I always think of that when I'm reading the Sue Grafton alphabet mysteries, because they took place in the 80s. Huge fan of those, by the way, and I got to meet her once. But anyway,
she was the best. She was just absolutely the best.
Oh gosh, she was the sweetest thing when I met her that time. So when I started out with my first series with Gemma Halliday, my Cookies and Chance series, I am currently working on book 12. That's my longest running series. And I really didn't know much about cozies at the beginning. I had read them, but I hadn't known I'd read cozies until my first agent at the time had told me, oh, you just wrote a cozy. And I did mine a little different. I guess I kind of hurried it up, because the agent at the time was telling me that, you can't have them get together too soon, that, you want to think about this in terms of like a 9-10 book series. But when I went to Gemma, I didn't have an agent, and she was fine with how I wanted to do it. And it worked a little differently for me, because my main character was recently divorced, and she got back together with her old high school sweetheart. So I had them married by the fourth book, which seems pretty quick in terms of cozy land, I know. And then what's that?
Or life.
Yeah. But they knew they'd been in love all these years, and they'd been separated, so they didn't want to wait any longer. And no one seemed to be bothered by that. And then she'd always wanted kids, so she had a baby by the 8th book, which was in that Christmas cozy that I wrote, Ginger Snapped to Death. And it's different, of course. I try to make each main character different in each series anyway. They all grow. That's my aim, that they all grow as they go along. Sally started off in those books as kind of timid. Now she stands up for herself more. Tessa, of course, the first 3 books in the Italian Chef series are more about her dealing with grief and getting over it and moving on with life. And then I have another series, my Cindy York series, is about a real estate agent who is middle-aged, which is almost like a no-no in cozy land. Everybody's got to be under 30, it seems, but she's starts out mid-40s, and she has kids. She has a husband, and she's a working mom, and that's takes it in a totally different direction too. She learns how to deal with clients as she goes along, gets more patience. So I think they always have to be learning something and growing in terms of that. And just I think they always have to be likable. You don't want a main character who is not likable, goes from unlikable to likable. I don't think that works. They've got to be likable from the beginning, even if they once in a while do a dumb thing like go down to the basement and they know the killer's there or something along those lines. But I don't think she's ever done that, but close maybe.
So both Katherine and Denise kind of mentioned not kind of knowing that they were writing cozies when they started. How about you, Lynn? Were you already a cozy fan and that's what you were setting out to do, or was that something you discovered while you were writing it?
Yeah, no, I actually started writing cozy or reading cozies when I was I didn't know what they were. But when I was going through cancer treatments, I started reading cozies because it was something that I could read and it took me away from, and it didn't have all the gore. I loved mystery, but I would pick up a book that said mystery at the library, and I'd open it up and it'd be the forensic stuff. And it's just like, oh, I can't read this right now. Thank you very much. So I was talking to a nurse and she said, oh, you like cozy mysteries? I said, what? So she said they're cozy mysteries, and she said one of our residents is a cozy mystery writer here in St. Louis, and I said really, and it was Susan McBride.
Oh.
And so the next day I was coming in for shots, and the next day she brought me a whole bunch of Susan McBride books. And then I was writing a blog and I said, oh my God, I found this Susan McBride that lives here. And Susan McBride saw it because of Google, and she sent me the next book in the series. So it was awesome. But so when I was listening to and talk about how they didn't know it was cozy. Well, when I wrote this first book, and it was the first one in the, actually I wrote One Poison Pie first, but I put it away. And then I shopped the first book in the Tourist Trap series, Guidebook to Murder. And I knew all the right things to say to my editor. And I didn't have an agent at the time. And I emailed my editor because she had done a contest for me. And it was just like, I have this book and it has series potential. And, I had it all set out, So she sent me an email probably a month later and said, hey, you said that, this might have series potential. What are you thinking of? And I'm like, oh, the next book, this happens. The next book, this happens. And then I get on the phone. I call my friend and I said, hey, the editor emailed me and she wanted to know about series potential. She said, okay, stop. Don't email her back. It's like, too late. So yeah, I knew it was a cozy. I knew that I wanted to write cozies because I enjoyed them so much. I wanted to bring that kind of enjoyment to other people that I got from them. But I didn't really know what the structure was, except for I knew that what I read. So
Nicole wants to know, where do the recipes in your books come from? Let's start with Katherine.
Mine are a combination of family, some very good friends who are better bakers than I am, a little of everything. I sometimes experiment, like in the Enemy Gnocchi, there is a gnocchi recipe at the end, and that is actually my recipe, so I'm proud of that. But for the most part, I borrow from friends and family, and they seem fine with that, and they're always happy to get a little acknowledgement.
How about you, Denise?
Well, I don't put recipes in my book, but I do have them on my website, and I do put a recipe in every one of my newsletters. And they're mostly from my family. My paternal grandmother was a professional baker in Belgium before she married my grandfather. And my mother is full-blooded Italian. And so cooking runs very deep in her veins and in her family. So I almost always can come up with just a recipe out of my own handwritten recipe box from my grandma and my mom.
Nice. And how about you, Lynn?
Mine are the same. I'm more of a comfort food type person. For the book for the new series that's coming out next year, I took a Texas sheet cake recipe that a friend of mine, that way back in the day when I used to work for the Department of Health and Welfare in Idaho, she always brought this Texas sheet cake, and it was just Shirley's Texas sheet cake. And so I grabbed that for this one. And I always take them and make sure it's going to work before I put it in, so that I don't forget something. So, but yeah, it's a lot of family stuff or stuff I remember. Like my mom used to always make cabbage rolls, and they're different than the ones that were on, on the recipe places on the internet, but it's home for me. So it's that feeling of home that I'm trying to share.
Perfect. So going with the recipe question, then my next Christmas themed, holiday themed question is, what is your favorite holiday treat? How about you, Lynn?
Pumpkin cheesecake.
Ooh.
And you marble it.
Mhm.
So it's like pumpkin and vanilla. I didn't think I liked cheesecake for a long time, and I always turned it down because it was the wrong texture for me.
Yeah.
But once I made that, I fell in love with cheesecake. So
Yes. I have a pumpkin chocolate cheesecake that I make for usually for Thanksgiving for a family too. It's so good.
oh, awesome.
How about you, Denise?
Well, my grandma Swanson made something called Seafoam, which is sort of like divinity, but a lot lighter texture and spongier. So that's my favorite treat. It's very hard to make though, and I have yet to come up with a batch that tastes like hers.
I haven't thought of divinity for years. My mom always made some.
Yeah, it's sort of like divinity. I've never seen the recipe like online anywhere or anywhere else. And grandma wasn't good about writing everything down in the recipe, and we were never sure if she did that on purpose so that we couldn't copy it exactly, or if she just, I think a lot of it was, she's like, well, that part.
Yeah.
No, we don't.
No.
And how about you, Katherine?
It's so funny hearing you say about the writing it down, because that's the same in my family. It's like, oh, well, you just add a pinch of this, and a little bit of this, and, like a handful. And nobody ever writes down the specific measurements.
My grandmother had a donut recipe, and she said it said shortening the size of a walnut.
Okay.
I'm a huge cheesecake fan.
When you're cooking, but when you're baking, you have to be a little more specific.
I'm a huge cheesecake fan myself. I love it. So I usually indulge in it in Christmas. I have actually lots of good cooks in my family. My father's side, my grandmother was born in Sicily. My maternal grandfather was born in Lebanon. So there's a lot of Lebanese recipes. There's a mamoul cookie, which is like almost like a wedding cake cookie with dates in it. Very, very good. I mean, it takes like all day to make though, so I never make it. But
okay, so Chris wants to know. We'll go with the current series that you have, the newest book out that we've been chatting about, because I know, like I said, you guys have multiples. But so, do you have a favorite character in the series? Let's start with Katherine.
I think it has to be Tessa. She's just been through so much in such a short time. And she's one of these people who has a very kind heart. She would feed the entire world if she could. And she's just the sort of person I think that you would want for a friend.
How about you, Denise?
Well, I think we would all probably pick our main character like Katherine did. But looking a little farther, Sky's best friend is a school librarian called Trixie, and I modeled her after the Trixie Belden books, the old children's books.
Oh, nice.
And I just love writing her because when I'm getting ready to write a scene with her, a lot of times I have the collection of Trixie Belden in every different cover that they came in. And I'll go and I'll read a couple of them just to get that personality in my head of how she was. And my Trixie is sort of sprite-like almost. She eats like a truck driver and weighs 90 pounds and talks like a truck driver sometimes. But she's also the first one who will, she volunteers for everything at the school. She runs all the clubs. I really like having Trixie from my childhood in this book or in this series. So I would say of the secondary characters, Trixie is my favorite.
And Lynn?
I'm going to pick a secondary character too. Mia's friend. I guess she's her best friend. She was her ex-boyfriend, ex-fiance's little sister. And so she comes to live with her in the first book and shows up with, crazy hair and goth look. And but she's totally human. She's all human, but she knows that Mia is different. She knows that Mia is a witch, and she learns more about the witchcraft and all of that. So I think I like her because she's the connection between the two worlds. And so it's kind of like she's the outsider looking in, where Mia and Trent may just think that, okay, this is normal, this is everyday stuff. She's kind of like, okay, this is a little weird, what about this? And she's always the one that's bringing up the questions. She's also going to school, so I had her do vocabulary words because she's in this one class, and so she has all these vocabulary words that she's using in this book, and she's always doing different vocabulary words. So I love that.
Okay, so Denise, April wants to know, are there ever going to be any more Forever Charmed mysteries?
Yes, I'm happy to say I'm writing the second one right now. It's called The Right to Bear Charms. And Lexi's mother is in trouble. And at the end of the first book, you get a hint that that Lexi's mom, the main character's mom, is in trouble, and this book sort of starts out at that same spot, and Lexi and several other characters have to go and rescue her, and then there's all kind of fallback because of how they had to rescue her. Thus the title, The Right to Bear Charms.
And also, Denise, Judy wants to know, she's just started the Scumble River series, so she wants to know, is cow chip bingo a real thing?
Yes, it is. I should say Scumble River is based on my hometown of Coal City, Illinois, in the adjoining two towns of Braidwood and Wilmington. And I am a farm girl. My dad was a farmer, and I am a small town girl. I grew up in a small town, and I'm back again now. And cow chip bingo is definitely an activity.
Awesome. So for those watching who might not know, what is cow chip bingo? I feel like that has to be like the next question. What actually is cow chip bingo?
Well, all of these towns, these little towns in the Midwest, probably other places too, have these huge festivals to bring in revenue. And usually it's something, they're famous for. Like one of the towns near us has the Gladiola Festival because they grow gladiolas. And Scumble River has the Chokeberries Day festivals because that was the only one I could find that hadn't been taken, pretty much, because every fruit and vegetable had been claimed. So these festivals have all kind of parades and games and things like that. And cow chip bingo is you pick a square in a field. Usually they'll take like a high school football field, and they'll chalk it into squares, and you buy these squares. You can buy as many as you want. Yeah. And then they turn a cow loose, and whichever square she poops in.
That's kind of what I was going to guess, so I'm glad I wasn't that far off. So,
no, we're real classy down here.
One of the little towns in Idaho had a festival every year, and it was the Rocky Mountain Oyster Festival. And if you don't know what Rocky Mountain oysters are, it's a part of a bull that turns into a steer.
That you clip off. Yes. You don't want it to.
And then you fry them and eat them. But...
yeah, pretty gross.
Yeah.
Very chewy.
So one of the hallmarks of cozy mysteries is, the amateur sleuth who is sometimes working with the police, sometimes they're working against the police. It kind of just depends. Sometimes it depends from book to book, kind of how that relationship works. So in your series, how do you balance how much an amateur sleuth can get away with versus what would actually be like police work? Where's the balance there for you? Let's start with Katherine.
Well, in the Italian Chef books, Tessa's cousin, Gino, is a police detective. I know a lot of people choose for the boyfriend to be in the police field, that sort of thing. I've kind of steered away from that. And he basically, his sister is also obviously Tessa's cousin and her best friend. And she's your usual secondary character who will go along with it, whatever Tessa says. She's always there to help. Like I think Denise was describing Trixie before, always on board for anything. And it really irritates her brother because, of course, he doesn't want them involved in this, of course, and wants them to stay out of it. But it just seems like, in the first case when her husband dies, there's no way she's going to stay out of that. And he actually tells her a lie. He tells her to get a job at the restaurant where he was last seen, a pizza parlor. And he's thinking that this way he's going to keep her, she'll be doing something, will get her mind off the grief and stuff. But he doesn't exactly expect it to find out that when she takes a job there, that that's going to lead her deeper into the murder. I don't want to give away any other spoilers, but through the series, he keeps telling them, stay out of it. Of course, they're not going to stay out of it. They're not going to listen and that sort of thing. And the situations are always very personal, so they can't stay out of it. The second time, and it can only be murder, the victim dies in Gabby's bookstore. So he's kind of like wasting his breath. I think there are some things, though, to try to keep it true to life where you don't want like for a true investigation, I wouldn't have them in on it. That's something that he would handle. So they're always careful not to step over some boundary lines, I think. But in other cases, he knows that he's fighting a losing battle. So,
yeah. How about you, Denise?
Well, the tricky part is what Katherine alluded to, is that you have to have a good reason for them to be involved. They can't just be a busybody. There's got to be some kind of reasonable motive for them to stick their nose in and to risk, bodily danger and to get involved in it. So in the beginning of the Scumble River book, it was fairly easy, since she's involved in the school and knows so many people, to do that. About a third of the way in, though, I realized that if this was going to be a long series, I was, going to run out of relatives and friends for her to help, and I needed another reason for her to be involved. So since she is a psychologist, I had the police department hire her as a psych consultant. And that has worked out so well to get her into these. I cannot tell you how much I love not having to figure out why she has to be involved anymore. Now, in my Chef to Go series, I did want to steer away from that because, of course, a different series. So Danny, who is the chef in the Chef to Go series, is begins to be involved with the head of the campus security at the college. So he has a little bit of law enforcement foot in the door, but not quite so much as being the chief of police like Sky's husband. And then in my dime store series, the Devereaux's Dime Store series, her significant other is an ex U.S. Marshal. So he had some, but now he doesn't have anything. So I actually, in the last couple of books, had him open up a private investigator's office to get her involved, because it's just really hard in a long running series to have any kind of legitimate reason for the amateur sleuth to be involved past a few books. At least for me, I know other authors have more creativity, but I just sort of gave up and got him into the police or the private investigating series.
And how about you, Lynn?
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about this. With Cat, it's her uncle who's the chief of police. So, he tries to keep her out of it, and she keeps saying it. The murder's in my house, which it usually is. But with Jill, it's her boyfriend / fiance now. So, in this book I'm writing right now with them, he's always telling her to stay out. She's always not listening to him. But this time he's actually asked her to go interview someone or go talk to someone. And he knows he's going to regret this, but so we'll see how that goes. With Angie, it was her boyfriend's uncle, and they had this for a long time, and finally he wanted her to help him out on something he was helping her investigate something that he wasn't investigating anyway, but he wanted to know what was going on. So he was using her. So that was a nice twist on that. But with the Kitchen Witch series, because we have mortals and we have witches, the chief of police is a mortal, and he doesn't really believe that there are covens and those type of things. He just thinks it's another club that people do, like Knights of Columbus or something. So they start being a little bit of a back and forth with things, but he starts to start listening to her and start helping her, and because he believes in her gut, and she's just trying to keep the witch part going and the investigation on the witch side, so that she's dealing with that part and he's dealing with the human part of that.
All right. So last question before we head out this evening is going to be a two-parter. So first part is what is something that you've read lately that you've loved? And second part is what do you have coming up next? Let's start with Katherine.
What have I read lately that I have loved? I recently listened audiobook because I have a day job, so it's hard for me to read as much as I like these days. I read Blacktop Wasteland and just absolutely loved it, or listened to it, excuse me. As far as reading, I'm drawing a blank here. I think it was probably
is reading.
Julie Mulhern's I love her country country club murder mystery series. And as far as what's coming up for me, I have a book in the Cookies and Chan series coming up in the spring, and I have a new series coming with Source Books next year, the Maple Farm Mysteries, which is set in Vermont. So I'm excited about that. A woman, she's a teacher, her name is Leila, comes home and takes over her father's business after he dies. He's actually murdered. And she takes over the farm and is trying to find out who actually killed him. And it's sort of like an Own Voices cozy too, because the family is Lebanese, like my mother's side. So I'm excited about this one.
Awesome. How about you, Denise?
Well, I have been sort of reading off the farm lately instead of in the cozy field.
Oh.
I have been reading a lot of Zombie books, and the book that I just finished, which was very good, was called The Jakarta Pandemic, which was actually a little too close to comfort with what is going on, but it was an excellent book about a family survival after a much worse pandemic than we've been going through. And along with that, the next book that I'll have on the shelves is going to be actually a zombie book.
Oh.
Which I know. Who would think that somebody who writes cozy and romance would end up with a zombie book? But you know how all our minds are. Once the ideas get in there, you just have to write them till they're out. So that book should be coming out next month. It's called Resurrection, and the resurrection is, of course, the zombies coming back to life, but it's also about a small town in Missouri called Resurrection, where the survivors end up going to try to survive. And as I said, the one I'm working on right now that hopefully will be out next year sometime is A Right to Bear Charms.
And how about you, Lynn?
I've read so many good books lately. It's awesome. I just love it. Una Out of Order. It's a time travel-ish type of book, and it is so good. She wakes up. She starts at 19, and when she wakes up on her birthday, which is always New Year's Eve, the next time she wakes up, she's 57, and she has no idea what's going on with her, and that's how her life goes.
Oh my.
And so she has to figure out what she's doing, and she has her mother that's walking her through, and this nice young man who's walking her through, and so it's really fun. And then the Book of Two Ways by Jodi Picoult. That if you like Egyptian mythology at all and time travel or alternate universe, that's a real good one. And my next book coming out will be A Fatal Family Feast. It's the Farm to Fork book. It'll come out in January, and in June, I have a couple other coming out after that. I have the next in the Cat Latimer and a Tourist Trap coming out. But in June, my new series, Tuesday Night Survivors Club, is the book, and the new series is the Survivors Club Mysteries, and it's kind of an own voices too, because it's a cancer survivor group set in. It's really fun with cancer survivors, and it's set in Sedona, and so she's starting a new bookstore there, the new chapter. And so she sets up this book club for survivors because books got her through it. And then one of them dies, and they have to figure out what happened. So it's a really fun take on cancer.
So to recap for anybody who might have joined us late, as we mentioned when we got started, Jenn McKinlay had a family thing, so she was not able to join us this evening. But we have been chatting with Katherine Bruns, whose newest book, The Enemy Gnocchi, which is the third in the Italian Chef Mysteries, has just come out. We've been chatting with Lynn Cahoon, whose book, Two Wicked Desserts, is the second book in the Kitchen Witch Mysteries that came out earlier this summer. And we've been chatting with Denise Swanson, whose book, Body Over Troubled Waters, is the fourth in the Welcome Back to Skimble River series, which also came out this summer. If you missed any part of our chat, once we're done, Facebook and YouTube will archive them, so you'll be able to rewatch them. While you're there, if you're on YouTube, I've actually created a specific YouTube playlist for all of the cozy events that we've done. So if you want to see more specific cozy author events, there's a lot of those there to check out. Also wanted to mention, I'm going to be chatting with Amanda Flower and MV Byrne at the beginning of December. Paige Shelton's got a new thriller in her Alaska series. I'm going to be chatting with her as well. And also going to be chatting with Laura Bradford and Cynthia Kuhn in December. So still a good handful of cozy things coming up to check out. As I mentioned, I dropped links to the Murder by the Book website for the event page if you are interested in tonight's authors' books, whether it's this series, the previous series, all of their info is there to pre-order. I think that is it. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This was so much fun to get to chat.
All right. Thank you, John. I
Yeah,
appreciate
sure.
it.
Thank you. Y'all have a good night. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.